Chris LeMay, the founder and curator of the National Electric Football Game Museum. You legions of electric football fans are in for a huge treat starting Monday, January 9th. The Art of the Buzz, an exhibit detailing the art of electric football, is kicking off at the Columbia State Prior Art Gallery. It's running every weekday until Friday, March 3rd. Mr. LeMay here has just spent 3 days setting it up. You've got to follow him on Facebook. There's a great photo, a series of photos of all the games loaded in your van. It's never been a more beautiful sight to see all your games crammed into a vehicle. How carefully did you drive those to the museum and unload those?
Very carefully. I mean, they're all in pretty good shape. There's not really nothing that special about them, but but yeah, I do take care of them. Yeah,
And they're pretty
obviously.
tough, right? I mean, they last a good
You know,
while.
oh yeah. I mean, I've got game boards all the way back from the original one in 1949, and
Wow.
all the way up through today, the one that Tudor Games makes today.
It's never really been bigger, right? I mean, I see all these great customizers of these figures, the boards. You got all the multiple sizes, and for the exhibit here now, it said you'll even set up an appointment on the weekend if folks want to come check it out.
Yeah.
Tudor Games apparently donated a prize for the tournament. Ron Mango is going to be there, a legend,
Yeah.
longtime player. So tell me a little bit about why the exhibit now, how it came about, and what you've got in store.
Well, I've always been interested in art. So the art gallery there at the college was having a watercolor art show. So I went to see it and just got to talking to the curator there and mentioned to her that I had an electric football game museum. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I used to play that with my brother." And I was like, "Well," said, I'm kind of looking for a place to do an electric football art show. And she's like, "Well, we've got an opening coming up here in the first of the year, January and March. If you'd be interested in doing it." So, well, yeah, certainly. And of course, she went through all her, people above her and we're all excited about it. So that's how it came about. Like I say, just happening to be in the gallery that day, talking to the curator. Like I say, she was familiar with electric football, so that helps obviously.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, that's how it all came about.
And when did you start playing? I mean, we all saw, the Sears wish books, the Christmas catalogs,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, just drooling over these beautiful games.
When I was about 10 years old, I actually was at a friend's house and they had gotten one for Christmas that year. And this was in 1967. And so, yeah, immediately after that, I started asking my parents for a, electric football game for Christmas. Now, it wasn't until about 2 years later that I finally did get one, but it was the AFL, Tudor Games AFL version with the Chiefs and Jets. And from there, I played it. Of course, ordered more teams. I had a solitaire league myself of about 8 teams that I played for, man, a good 3 or 4, 5 years, I guess, until I turned 16,
Sure, sure.
which obviously then it went under the bed.
Right, right.
and and I don't even know what happened to it. I mean, of course it's no longer around where I know where it's at. But anyway, at 1997, I actually saw the game on a store shelf in a Toys R Us store in Huntsville, Alabama. And the person I was with, I said, "Yeah, I used to play that game. I'd kind of like to have one again." So she bought me that for Christmas.
Wow.
And so that's what started it.
Awesome.
25 years of getting back into it, collecting, playing. I mean, I've been to a lot of the leagues and tournaments and played in them. And then, yeah, then just like say, I started collecting the game boards, and I'm more interested in the game boards than really the teams and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've painted and sold the teams. I still paint my own teams mostly.
Wow.
Like I said,
Wow.
I've never really been that into collecting the teams unless they just happen to come with a certain game board.
Were you a Jets or Chiefs fan when you got the AFL set?
Yeah, Jets, Joe Namath, and just a general football fan in general.
Sure.
I mean, my dad was a big football fan. He was Baltimore Colts and Johnny Unitas,
Ooh, that
and
must have been. Must have been fun
Yeah.
watching Super Bowl III then.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I say, my dad was we I got all kinds of board games for Christmas, football board games. So that's so yeah. In addition to the electric football, I do have a collection of football board games. The old ones like the Ideal All Pro Football, APBA, obviously. Got some of those. Sports Illustrated one that come with the charts and everything for all the teams. That's the one I played mostly with when I was growing up. And but then yeah, like I say, once I got into electric football, that was pretty much this is my game. This is the one I like to play. And the appeal to me with it is it's more of a hands-on type game. I mean, you actually set the players up. You can run all kind. You can run football plays, and you get really good results from that. I mean, realistic, very realistic. Uh, so yeah, that's where I guess that's how it all started.
Pardon me. Did you keep stats in your leagues or for personal use?
Yeah, I did. Uh, I I had a notebook. Of course, I don't have it anymore. But yeah, I had a full 10 seasons of yeah, stats, play-by-play reports, records. End of a season, I'd choose Pro Bowl teams, all that stuff based on, and for the longest, for several years, I only like kept the scoring records, like when they would score touchdowns and whatever. But then, yeah, later on, I got to actually doing game full game reports, play-by-play game reports, and that's what I do now. And when I'm playing solitaire now, that's how I do it. I keep full game reports, take pictures, obviously, and yeah. So I've actually got a full PDF download of my last season that I played with the results in it and everything. So anyway, it's obviously that's what I like.
So speaking of pictures, I mean, this is the art of the buzz. It's the art of electric football. You say you're
Yeah.
really into the boards. How did you kind of cull your collection to decide what to show off here? Will you be rotating some pieces in and out during the presentation, the exhibit?
No, I don't think it's the game boards that are hanging on the wall and the pictures that I posted are pretty much that's going to be that'll stay. Uh, I do wasn't able to really display all the teams that I wanted to, so I may try to work those in and some more graphics because obviously I mean I wanted to do a whole lot more graphics of people playing some stuff that goes on at tournaments and stuff like that. So I may be able to work those in to it. But yeah, it was kind of of course, pretty fast thing. I mean, 1st of August is when we first, started talking about it. And then it was on into September before we actually, decided, yeah, we're going to do this, had a time set and everything. So yeah, I mean, I had that much time to do it. Of course, I had and actually all the game boards that are in it were hanging on my walls in my house, in my bonus room. I've actually set it up like a museum. So now, of course, there's a few still on the wall, but for the most part, that's what is in that gallery now. And like I say, it is a timeline history, more or less, of electric football, but showing it through the different game boards. Because really, I think the game boards is really what people brings back the memories of electric football
And
to
now
most people.
sure, sure. And you've got now, I mean, you can get team skins for all all
Oh,
those looks. I mean, will you now? I mentioned that Tudor Games apparently has donated a deluxe
yes.
for a tournament. So how is that you having a competition?
Yeah, I've actually got 3 game boards set up for people to play on, and of course the college faculty staff, they're the ones more interested in than anybody because they're already planning their competition and who they're going to challenge to games, and the students they don't come back till right before we have a reception scheduled for January the 19th, and they don't come back till like the 7th, 16th, or 17th. but yeah, I mean, before they left for Christmas break, there had flyers been put out with rules and everything that was planning for a tournament. And like I say, Tudor Games was very generous to donate us a game board to present as on the prize. And of course, there'll be a trophy. And so yeah, it turned, it's more than just an art show, you know, and I mean, it's actually a full tournament event. So
And you have connections to Canton, I believe. We're going to be there in August for our second tournament. It's been a 10-year gap, but you folks, the electric football folks, were really the first people to kind of go and play games at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right?
yeah, yeah, the Miggle Toys that produced the games during the 2000s for about that 2000. They did it for about 9 years, or I'm sorry, 1993 up until about 2010s when they owned it. And they're the ones that actually started the tournaments and conventions. And in 2000, the Pro Football Hall of Fame actually invited them to bring their tournament to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And of course, I went to it. It was the second tournament that I actually went to, and where I met a lot of those people that play or highly competitive. I mean, man, we've been friends ever since then. It's one of those things that it's more about the fun and the fellowship with people than it is in the competitions more than anything else. I mean, it's just you gotta. And I was surprised how many people there actually were out there that were still doing it. I mean, this was, to me, it was just a game I played as a kid, mostly by myself, maybe with a few friends every now and then. But yeah, I mean, it's grown. It's grown. Gosh, there's hundreds of people now that still play, and there is that separation of people that play solitaire and the people that play in the leagues and tournaments. And really, the solitaire section, to me, there's more people involved with it that way than there are actually people that play, in the leagues and tournaments.
Interesting. That I was going to ask you about strategy, and I've been talking to some folks recently. We talked about how honest a coach you can be. If you've got your favorite team and you're playing against the arch rival. What are some key strategies for you? Will you be giving some folks some tips at the exhibit, but also as a solitaire electric football player? How do you kind of handle playing realistically?
I more or less just act as the offensive coach. In other words, I mean, I'm more or less running the offense for both teams and just setting up a basic defense. And like zone coverage is mostly, basic 4-3 or a 3-4 defense. But again, I play a style that where you can actually say stop the board 2 or 3 times during the progress of the play, so that you can adjust your players to go in certain directions. If they start getting off and running towards the sideline, you can actually stop it and turn them back in. But then at the same time, when you do that, then you can also adjust your defensive players to react to that play. So that's how I play it. And but like I say, mostly I'm acting as the offensive coach. Now there are people out there who have devised play charts to call the plays for the offense and defense. I mean, it's gotten really strategic. Yeah, you know, people just trying to make the game more realistic in that way. So
I,
also that's also where like football board games come in, because they take a lot of the elements from those games to incorporate into their football.
awesome. How might you do that? I mean, use some charts or something like that, or
Yeah, even I took an AP one of the APA football, whatever APBA football games that had a chart in it for distances on punting and kicking.
right?
So I took a chart out of that and created a deck of cards that you can use instead of that little kicker that and kicks the ball everywhere, and you wind up spending 30 minutes on the floor trying to find a football. you know, so that kind of that's that eliminates that. But yeah, it actually gives you, and it's just really just giving you a distance of punts and kickoffs, and of course you just normally run like you would a punt return and a kick return.
Love
But
it.
that's the thing that I added to Solitaire that a
That,
lot of people do use. So
that's awesome. I love it. Hybridizing. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. I feel like you're seeing still young players. I mean, you're talking about board games. We're all kind of fretting about, the next generation. And
yeah,
certainly video games have us all beat. But then, right up there is electric football. It's so tactile, visual, so cool. Art of the buzz. It's amazing. Do you see kind of a broader demographic in the electric football world today?
yeah. I mean, yeah, you're still mostly people in their you know 50s and 60s that are really the people who are more involved in it. 40s, but yes, there is that younger generation that is starting, getting bored with video games basically and looking for something else. So yeah, they're seeing all these videos on YouTube about how people play electric football now, and so yeah, they're getting interested in it. And I guess part of it, even all across, as far as solitaire playing competitively or not, is in creating the teams because the especially if you watch some of these videos, you'll see the players how much more detailed and everything they are as far as you know paint jobs, face masks, chin straps, all decked out in detail. I mean, gloves. I mean, it's everything that people are playing with in these tournaments, and that's what's really I think driving the hobby now. More than anything is it's also got that collectible side to it. To where, the people that are collecting those, creating those teams. I mean, you can talk to anybody almost, and they've got countless number of teams.
That's all right.
And the bases is, of course, the bases was the big thing. There's that old adage of the players only run around in circles. Well, yeah, and they still will, but you have to. We call it tweaking the
Mm.
bases to where you can actually take flyers to them and lighters and enhance the performance of the bases. You can make them run in a certain deck. You can give them strength characters. You can give them speed characteristics. And like I say, the reason that some people have 48 players on a team or 60 players on a team because they've got them tweaked to do certain things. So yeah, and that's where a lot of the strategy comes in now. Those bases. There's one company in particular, other than Tudor, that produces bases that most of the competition people use now, and that's ITZ bases. And they are, and the owners of them are Mark and Bill Klingbeil, and they were like one of the first brother teams to win a tournament with Miggle back in the late '90s. So they've taken it that far too, to where now they're producing competition level bases for the figures, and that's really the figure's nice looking and all, but unless you got the right base on it that can do certain things, it's not much good.
Sure, sure. When you're setting up your teams, or when folks set up their teams, 40, 50, 60 players, do you try to mimic, say, the 99 Rams? Would you, try to mimic like a Marshall Faulk, a certain running style of Barry Sanders? Or are you tweaking more for, I've got a guy who runs inside, an outside guy, a speed guy? I mean, how are you, maximizing offensive and defensive skill?
yeah, there are those guys that do try to do that, mimic a certain player. Like you say, Walter Payton. Uh, if you got a Bears team, you gotta have a Walter Payton on there, or whatever team you're playing with. Yes, there are those certain players that you want on your team. Like say now you create, yeah, and that's the good thing about it. Is you can create any roster from any year all the way back through the history of football, and that's what most guys do. Of course, college playing with college teams now is real big. There's actually probably more as far as the competition level. There are actually probably more guys playing with college teams now than pro teams. So,
I actually saw somebody had a board, a Middle Tennessee board. Someone posted on your page. Amazing.
yeah, I know. I was interested in that one because I did actually go to school at MTSU for a year, and I had an MTSU team at one time. So it's like I may be hitting this guy up like, you want to get rid of that board? You want to sell that board?
For a good cause. That's
Yeah,
right.
I know. But yeah, and that's that too. Like say with the custom boards, it's actually become more popular, especially in the competition levels, to use custom game boards, decorated. We call them field covers that you put on the game board with your favorite teams, and I mean, there's all kinds of decorations on the field as far as what people use, especially in these competitions. And there's the guys out there who actually design those field covers for people. So they're making good money on just doing that.
For sure. Yeah, everyone loves a custom field, boy. There's nothing like pulling out.
Yeah,
I've got one set up here for a guy named Paul Barone's making his little fields for Stratomatic here. So
yeah.
it's just like that adds that extra thing there. Do you ever try to simulate like weather effects like snow or rain, or is it just not really feasible?
Yeah. Actually, it's snow more than anything.
Sure.
Uh, I've seen guys, put flour on game boards to simulate snow, and you can actually get a field cover that actually looks like a snow field. Of course, that's nothing. It just looks like it. But yeah, like I say, I've seen guys put flour on the board to simulate snow. And rain's kind of, you can't
Well,
really
you don't
do
want
that.
you don't want a wet electric board there. But I mean, in terms of like, would you kind of grade the players down, kind of tweak it so they're maybe not gaining as much yardage? Would you try to simulate running in mud or something like that? Or
No, like I say, if you're putting flour on the board, that's going to affect the players as far as how they perform. Because yeah, anything that obstructs their movement, because they're working off the vibration of the game board. It is. So I've never done that, but I may try it one day just to
I
see
love
how
it.
it works. But yeah. There's and again, it's like the solitaire players that do most of that. I guess I am more partial to the solitaire guys than anybody. A lot of people are because they are the ones that come up with all this stuff. I mean, even a lot of the things that they use now in competitions, like rather than using that quarterback, there's passing sticks. There's again like the charts for kicking and stuff like that people use that have actually come from solitaire coaches. So, you know,
Speaking of the players, who are, I mean, I mentioned Ron Mango is going to be
yeah,
attending. Who are some of the big names? There was a magazine I saw called Kraken Plastic. I
yeah,
believe was
yeah,
it you were sharing those, and
yeah.
a great magazine. And I guess they're on a printing hiatus, but it's great. They show photos of the actual players out front with their trophies and stuff. Who are some of the best players out there, the biggest names?
Um, Brian Phillips right now is probably the top one because he's won a lot of tournaments. There's Rafik McDaniel out of Atlanta, Charles Lane. If you seen a lot about the Hulk, that's Jim Davis out of Detroit, and he's really one of the ones that is, like we call him a master tweaker. He'll tweak bases for you for a premium, and he'll outfit your whole team with bases that he's tweaked. And Kenneth Allen is one. I mean, of course, there's probably about 20 that are the top players that are really good. But yeah, like I say, Brian Phillips is probably the best one right now.
Is there a competition schedule, even loosely, kind of around the country? And is there a fairly standard set of competition rules?
Yes, yeah. There's what we call the Tournament of Champions (TOC) rules, and that's what most people now in competition use. But yeah, they have a series of 6 tournaments throughout the year, spaced about every 2 months apart. And these guys travel to those. Uh, yeah, I mean they're all the way from DC to LA. Uh, I like to say there's about 6 of them. Yeah, we actually get the West Coast, the East Coast, and the Mid America. There's competitions where we try to get enough in so that somebody can come to at least one of them. So that there's those, and that culminates in a end of year championship tournament where they actually crown the national champion. And you earn points with how many games you win, things like that, and there's coaches rankings. Yeah, so it's pretty elaborate. And then the other one is the MFBCS, which is the Miniature Football Bowl Championship Series, and that's the college-based teams that they play mainly with the college teams, and they do it more as a regional type thing where so many coaches will set up a league in a certain area, mimicking say like the SEC or the ACC, that kind of thing, the teams that they're using. And of course, then they're playing, amongst themselves. But yeah, they also, they'll go to like other events and uh, challenge, other from other conferences. And I think they do require you to play so many non-conference games. Very much like college football. You play so many conference games, and then you play so many non-conference games. Again, it's a point based on how much you win and all that. So yeah, it's really out there.
Are there any rules? Do you allow for injuries, or do you limit kind of usage or substitution, anything like that? Yeah.
I think there are some. Uh, there was at one time there was a set of rules that had what we call the box, and it was some dice that had a section on it. You shake the box, and it was set up to uh, call penalties, injuries. Like okay, this running back's injured now; he can't play anymore for so many plays, or he might be out for the season. I mean, there was that level of it. So yeah, like I say, electric football is one of those games that you can play pretty much any way you want to play it. I mean, yeah, like I say, the only limitations is when you start playing in the leagues tournaments. You got to go by what they've set up because they have rule committees that meet, during the year, set all these rules up for a year. Then they'll review them again at the end of that year, see what all they're going to keep going with. And again, whereas in solitaire, that's where you'll find the most variations because you're not limited to anything other than what you just want to do.
What are some of the wildest plays that you've executed?
I don't know. I was playing in a tournament one time where I actually ran the only first 3 plays I even run were kickoff returns, 100-yard kickoff returns for touchdowns. And I was playing against one of the top players. I mean, in this tournament, he was like the number 1 seed, and I'm the last seed of 16. And I almost pulled it off on the fourth kickoff return. Of course, he was matching me touchdown for touchdown. And on my fourth kickoff return attempt, he stopped it. he did stop that one. So that was the end of it. And I couldn't move the ball any further. Of course, he went down and scored again and won the game. So that's the closest I've ever come. But now I'm actually pretty good at passing with that quarterback figure. So yeah, I mean, I've hit 50-yard passes. I've hit 60. I've hit long passes.
Nice.
And so that's the wildest stuff with me. And one time I was playing a game, was running a running play, and somehow my running back, my yeah guy that was carrying the ball, got stuck to the back of a blocker, and he followed him all the way down the field for a touchdown. I mean,
That's
from
it.
about from like 60 yards out. It's like,
Nice.
wow, I ain't never seen that happen. So it happens. Yeah, there are things that happen like that. Again, when you're in the leagues and tournaments, yeah, you really got to be able to pass more than anything to win those running games. Because really, most guys consider a guy, the running back to be tackled whenever a player of the defense just touches them, any part of his base. So yeah, it's very hard to run the ball. So like say if you're watching any game, you will actually see them passing more than anything else. Because really, once a receiver gets out there and it's open, if they didn't have their defensive back set right, they're done. They're gone. And score a touchdown. So yeah, and that's where you'll see in the high scoring games that those guys are passing more than they are anything else.
And the passing is basically you kind of fling the ball and it's just got to hit the receiver, any part of the base or something like that, or
Yeah, you're part of the figure of the base. And there's like I say, the quarterback figures from what they originally were they've been technological. Yeah, they've been advanced to the point of they're pretty accurate. They can throw the ball straighter and more accurate. So yeah, if you're gonna do that, you want to get one of them quarterbacks, and of course practicing that a lot. I mean, it does take a lot of practice to do that. But yeah, it's very exciting, obviously.
Sure, sure. Speaking of, now you've got the new equipment available. Would you, if you would, walk us through kind of the key moments in evolution from those first games in the late 40s to now?
Yeah, yeah. In the late '40s, the first game that was invented, the players were single pose, 3-point stance, stamped out of metal. Yeah, just a 2D stamped metal figure on the bases were metal. Uh, it, the prongs on the bases of the legs. It was all metal. Because Tudor, I mean, that was the name of the company, Tudor Metal Products. So they had been producing, toys. I mean, they started in 1928 actually, and had been producing toys out of metal. And then, of course, during World War II, and there kind of was a limit on uh, it kind of hurt them. But then, like I said, this wasn't invented until 1949. And they actually took game board. They had a horse racing game or an auto racing game, I believe, that was using that electromagnetic motor and the vibration technology to move, the horses or the race cars. And so Norman Sass, who was president of two gangs at that time, this would make a pretty good football game. So he created that football game, and it took off from there. Like I said, they were the only ones that even produced a electric football game for 5 years. And then Gotham got into it; they started producing them, and then they were the only two up until the 1970, when Coleco, Monroe got into them. But they only lasted a couple of years, and then, like I say, by the mid '70s, Tudor was actually probably the only one left that was still producing electric football games. And like I say, as far as the figures, in the early '60s, they started producing 3D figures, and the bases getting better. How to started making stuff out of plastic more then. And then when in '67, when Tudor got the NFL license, of course they started painting the teams and NFL uniforms, and that's when it really took off and got more popular. Because of course the NFL during the '60s, that was probably their biggest period of growth. Before they taking over from baseball as being America's game, and that's what helped electric football. As far as getting the NFL license and producing these teams, and yeah, like I say that, and that's kind of started the collecting and everything too, because you talk to guys that we got this game in the '60s, and man, we got every NFL team home and away jersey, all that, and guys have still got those things. You go on eBay, and there's no limit to what you can find as far as electric football figures and game boards. Yeah,
it's definitely throwback uniforms and all that is great.
Right, but yeah, Tudor actually they sold out to another company in '88, '89. And again, video games were starting to take over then, and people were moving away from electric football. And there was a period of a year or two that there actually wasn't any games being produced. Wow. And then, like I say, Miggle Toys, Michael Landsman, he was actually he worked for Superior Toys, which was the company that bought it from Tudor. It wound up in bankruptcy. Tudor Games actually wound up in bankruptcy. So Michael Landsman, he bought it out of bankruptcy. And again, he started in '93. He started producing games again. And then like '95, I think is when they had their first convention tournament. The first tournament was just an invitational tournament. They knew some guys in the Chicago area that they invited to come play in this tournament. And again, it went from there. It went from like 5, 6 people up to 100, 200 people coming to these conventions. Of course, the game boards have changed over the years. They're as far as the mass-produced game boards, they're not quite the quality they were back in the '60s. Now, Tudor games now they've gotten better at it. They've actually they've improved their game boards to the point now where more people are starting to use theirs, and they Miggle lost the NFL license in like 2007. So there was that period when they weren't able to produce NFL teams, which kind of put a hindrance on it. But then when Doug Strom that purchased Tudor in 2012, I mean, we all told him and said, first thing you got to do is get that NFL license back. And he did. And so, so he produces the NFL teams now. Of course, all the his NFL license, and then that's helped to bring, of course, keep it going. But during that period, I mean, people got to painting their own teams, and of course they're painting their own, college and NFL teams, and the figures, of course, like I say, now decals has become a big thing as far as decorating your players, getting all the leg stripes straight and all the stripes straight and the helmet logos and everything to look more realistic.
I remember, those logos would be kind of a blob sometimes. It's kind of really intricate, but some guys are good. Are you more of a paint guy or a decal guy?
I'm a paint guy. I have used decals, very seldom do. Now my big thing that I do as far as painting is I'm reproducing. I'm doing reproductions of the Tudor teams from the '60s. The original NFL teams, how they were painted. It's a lot easier, obviously, because the one that I use is the Dallas Cowboys star. It's just a little round blue glove, So, but it's still, I mean, it's still as bad as those paint jobs were. You still knew what team it was. Right. It didn't matter. Especially when you're a kid, it doesn't matter. It looks like the Packers. It looks like the Cowboys. That's all that really mattered. And there are, like I say, there are still those people who like that style. I mean, I've sold bunches of teams that I've painted, and even and I've painted like World Football League teams, USFL football teams, the NFL Europe. I've painted everything,
Wow.
XFL, college. I mean, I've painted everything for people at various times. But now I more concentrate on my own and just doing reproduction NFL teams from the 60s, 70s.
And I see cards and dice folks. I'll see them use. I would love to have a set of one from every home and away for all 32 teams. You can just use them to move down the field instead of just using the football or something like that. So
well, yeah, I've seen guys do that. I've seen one guy that actually he uses a board game, but he recreates that play on his electric football game.
nice.
He just sets the players up. He's not actually moving, but he'll take a picture of the results or whatever from using a board game. So yeah, I mean it works both ways. I mean, football board game guys can use electric football. Electric football guys can use board games for certain things. So it's very much together.
Yeah. Tell me about the quality. I mean, the motor is kind of a big deal.
And the big thing and why we call it the buzz and why my thing's entitled The Art of the Buzz, of course, was the electromagnetic motors. And that's, there was always that concept of them being so loud. But I mean, you're plugging in a game board, metal game board is vibrating. Yeah, it's going to create some noise. And depending on what you got it set on, whether it's your kitchen table or if it's a harder surface, then yeah, that noise is going to be a lot louder. Guys started making rotary type motors with an offset counterweight to vibrate the board, and they're always of course they're mounted underneath the board, and that of course that's what causes them anything. I mean, you can even take your finger and tap the board and make the player move. Right. Just whatever would cause a vibration to make the figure move, because that's what is actually the movement, the bases that are on the player. That's what's creating your movement. But the motors have gotten to a point of there's still the best ones are the electromagnetic motors, but they make them now to where they're encased in a 3D printed case with magnets on the feet that you can place up under the board. And again, you're trying to find that sweet spot on the board to where that motor is placed that will maximize the performance of the board. Because before most of the time they're mounted in the corner of like one of the end zones, and so you've got dead spots in your game boards. The further away you get from that motor, it starts slowing down, and the closer you are to that motor, they're jumping all over the place and are more likely to fall down, of course, there. And the speed, I guess the main thing is you're more able to control the speed of the game boards now, the way they're doing the motors now. And saying, I mean, guys are turning these things up so high to where, I mean, a player will run 100 yards in 2 or 3 seconds.
Wow.
Faster guys they've got. And so, we kind of have to put limits on that every once in a while.
I was going to say, what's your speed limit? Yeah, that's funny.
But no, again, you're watching these tournament games and the speed that their guys are running at, it's pretty fast.
It's nice.
A play doesn't last. An actual play doesn't last 1 or 2 seconds.
I was going to ask, actually, I'm glad. First, 2 things. I'm glad you brought up 3D printing. Is anyone, to your knowledge, 3D printing figures yet?
Yeah. There's actually, I know of at least 3 people, companies that are doing 3D print figures. Like Next Level Authentics, Game Day, a guy called 808 Sculpts. that are the ones are the figures that most people are getting nowadays, and they're all 3D printed. Yeah. And that's again, this is a game that has spurred a cottage industry almost of guys that are 3D printing the figures. I mean, even hand sculpting the figures uh, for people to paint. Then you've got that section or guys that only paint the teams, and when they're and these guys and doing all the detailing, the high detailed figures with all the you know the face mask and chin straps, and all that's 3D printed. And so you've got the guys that are getting, man, $300 and $400 for a set of say 30 players.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, I mean it's a good side hustle if you want to get into that part of it.
Sure. Is there a regulation kind of weight, size, kind of a weigh-in, if you will, for competition play for the play?
Yes, there is. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's actually a set of figure and base standards that the TOC put out to where the players have to conform to a certain size, and I think the limit's kind of like it's either 35 millimeter or 39 millimeter. The scale is actually close to 1/72nd or 1/54th, depending on you know as the guys have started 3D printing, the figures have gotten bigger. So yeah, there is a set of standards to what we try to keep these figures in to at least looking humanly proportionate, not getting so far out of proportion that they're not they're looking unrealistic. We try to keep them as realistic as possible. And then the bases, of course, the bases almost have to be a certain size because you got the platform that the figures are on that have to fit those bases. So that's the size of them hadn't changed a whole lot. It's increased a little bit with the IPZ bases, but and of course there's size regulations on them. But then when you because people are turning the board speeds up on the board so high, and these figures are running so fast and all that, we had to start putting weight on them to keep them from falling over so much. So we usually use a combination of poster putty and tungsten putty to add weight to them, and the standard weight limit is like 4.0 grams. So that's when you're playing in one of these competitions, they actually do weigh weigh all your figures and make sure you're 4.0 or under. And so that's part of it too. Um, so there's things like that. It's gotten to that point.
Speaking of size, I know Tudor has got kind of like, I think, the three sizes of board up to the
Yeah.
gargantuan, beautiful looking. Is there an advantage or disadvantage to the different sizes in terms of, I mean, more area, I would imagine, is more room to run, but also harder to defend?
The standard size now that most people play on is like 2 foot by 4 foot playing field. Now at one time they create, which is about a 3/8 inch to a yard scale for the field. And so the advantage is you got more room to do different things. I built a custom game board that is 30 inch by 16 inches. That's based on a 7/16 to a yard, which again, you're getting more space. But the largest ones that's ever been made are called the monster boards. You may hear people talk about the monster boards occasionally, and they're the 1/2 inch to a yard scale, which actually does fit the scale of the figures more.
Okay.
That is the scale that actually fit the figures better. And I mean, there's a lot of people that have those size game boards. There was actually a tournament one time that only used those game boards. Jerry McGee was the first person to make a monster board, big board. So he was running a tournament to where that's all you could, that was the game boards everybody used, was that bigger size. So there's it's like I say, it's not as portable 2x4 size is more, easier to transport, a little more better portable size.
Since you are the National Electric Football Game Museum, is there kind of a Guinness Book of World Records gargantuan board even beyond the monster boards?
No, yeah, it's that monster board. That's the biggest ones I know of. And I've actually talked to Jerry McGee, tried to get him to donate his original game. I actually played a game on it back in '99. It was the first time I played one on it. Yeah, it's definitely a lot better as far as like having plenty of room to set up your offense and defense and everything. And again, it creates more realistic, type actions with those bigger game boards. So, but yeah, like I say, the 2x4 is really kind of the standard uh, that most people use, and that's kind of what their rules specify. It's a 2x4 larger. But then you also have to adjust if guys are using called passing sticks for passing rather than QB. They have to be, the size of them has to be adjusted to the size of the game board.
So the passing stick, explain that to me, as I don't think I've seen one.
So like when you're calling a pass, and your quarterback, of course, he's fading back so far. Then your receiver goes out so far. And of course, if he's open, then based on the distance between the quarterback and the receiver, there's another stick that you place out away from the receiver to place the ball. It's a magnetic ball that sits on the game board. And then that receiver has to run and hit that to actually complete a pass. Which what that does is that it actually gives the defense an opportunity to react and intercept the ball. Whereas when you're just regular passing and you're hitting the guy, whether it's complete or incomplete, yeah, the defense doesn't really. I mean, unless you just happen to miss your receiver and it hits a defensive guy, was the only time there was an interception. And so, yeah, the passing sticks is just another element that creates more realism, gives the defense an opportunity to react with a better chance of intercepting or whatever. So that's how that all came about. And two, it was part of I know we had one coach who was physically handicapped to where he couldn't pass using the QB figure. So that was kind of something that somebody came up with to kind of help him be able to pass the ball rather than have to run it all the time. So, and of course, like I say, as we get older and everything, the guy has become more popular, like I said, with the solitaire people. Because you like I say, you wind up spending more time in the floor trying to find your ball because you missed a pass or something. So yeah, it's just another element. And then Tutor actually sells a set of those that is, of course, you can use it on any size game board. There's kind of scale to the distance, but it doesn't really matter. It's just setting the ball out further away from the receiver, so that, yeah, he either runs to it and catches it, or he doesn't.
Speaking of time, how much time do you allot for a game, and is there a different solitaire versus face-to-face?
Yeah. In competitions, they typically have either 30 or 35-minute halves. They play it in halves. They don't play it in quarters, typically. So they're playing in a half, and they pretty much set about a 1 hour time to complete a game. So, again, you're playing in a half, which, yeah, it does. You also have a time limit to set your players up. So, like if you're on offense, you have, I think it's either 40 seconds or 50 seconds to set up your offense. Of course, the defense is setting up theirs while you're setting up. But after you call set, then the defense has an extra additional 10 seconds to set their guys up so that they're, making sure everything's covered. And then the play sequences, you can do motions and pivots and the defense can react by the same thing. So yeah, you're probably you're taking a good 2 minutes to run a play. So yeah, in a competition, I mean, it's moving pretty fast. I mean, you're only going to get so many opportunities to have the ball to be on offense. So yeah, that's why you see those. But an hour is a good time limit because you see games that are like 21-14, something like that. I mean, they're not real high scoring, but yeah, it does limit the number of opportunities you get to actually be on offense in the competition. Now, whereas solitaire, man, I play solitaire games just as I can, in my spare time or whatever. I may go 2 or 3 weeks just trying to complete one game. But I'm playing I'm playing more realistically with setting the guys up and timing and things like that. And another thing that's become real popular is limiting the number of plays per quarter or per half or whatever. So you might play like 15 plays per quarter or something like that. And that's very seldom used in competitions because yeah, they're on time limits now. Because you're in a competition, you're actually set up in a division where you're playing with like 2 or 3 more guys, and you're playing each other at least once. And so yeah, the idea in a tournament is you want to get all that first round of games completed within a certain amount of time. And then whoever won, if you got 8 divisions, then the winners from those divisions advance to the next bracket playoff rounds. And then they start playing each other. And a tournament, like I say, is typically tournaments are 2-day tournaments. A lot of times they'll start on Friday night. They'll start playing. And then it'll go all day Saturday. And then Sunday you'll have your championship games, conference championships, and then your Super Bowl games. And it's usually over by lunch on a Sunday.
So speaking of events, do you, based on how this event goes and your turnout here at the Prior Art Gallery, the Art of the Buzz exhibit running through January 9th to March 3rd, do you plan any other events like this, maybe farther out and or at your museum, the facility? I mean, what is the NEFGM facility in Spring Hill, Tennessee? What is it kind of?
Of course, the facility in Spring Hill is my house. It's my bonus room. So, but yeah, I mean, anybody's welcome to come visit anytime. I mean, my goal is to eventually have a full-blown museum. I mean, build a building, rent a building, whatever, to actually set up a full-scale museum. I used to work in the museum exhibit business, so I have that experience with that. And knowing how museums operate and everything. And this is actually my first public exhibition of electric football. So yeah, we'll see how this turns out and what kind of opportunities come from that, which I'm already seeing a lot more opportunities from people. I mean, interviewing with you, for example. I've already, yeah, I had I've done several radio spot interviews locally for the art show. Got a couple more planned. But like I say, we're having a reception, public reception, January the 19th from like 5 to 7. That will actually be open. We'll have grilling hot dogs, and we're actually doing a kind of a tailgate type thing with that. And one of the things with it is I actually had a guy build me a stadium out of Legos to go around one of my game boards.
Love it.
And his name's Kerry Wu, and he was on the last season of Lego Masters. Him and another guy had a team. They were competing, on Lego Masters. So that's cool. And he's gonna speak at this reception.
Awesome.
And he's local. He lives close to where I am. And so yeah, he's gonna be speaking at that reception. And like we say, Ron Mango, he hand paints all his teams, and he's got a very elaborate stadium set up, and he plays solitaire. But yeah, I mean he's of course paints the hand paints the teams, and they're very good. So yeah, he's going to be demonstrating how to paint teams at that. Like I say, he's donated me a couple of teams, for the museum and to put in this exhibit.
What about some of the more, we asked about the big names in the competitions. What about the famous players? Any celebrity electric football fans out there?
Weird Wolf, Lynn Schmidt, Weird Wolf. I mean, he's kind of like the Kansas City super fan. If Kansas City's playing on TV, he always makes it on TV. I mean, he's like their ultimate super fan. I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame with a super fan exhibit, things like that. So yeah, there are he dresses up the full whatever he dresses up as is Weird Wolf, and then he's in of course Kansas City, and I mean he started the Miniature Football Coaches Association back in the mid 2000s, but yeah, he's still very much active. He plays in the local league mainly, the Kansas City Electric Football, and then there's like Raider Man who dresses up like one of the Raider super fans, Paul Bartles, that lives in I think he lives in Nexum, Missouri. But yeah, they actually met each other at the convention that was at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And of course, they were all dressed up in their stuff. And in Sports Illustrated, there's an article in Sports Illustrated that was covering that. And there's a photo in there of them over a Miggle Stadium game board playing each other. So that's kind of one of the icon things. So they're the most famous ones as far as that part goes.
Nice. Now, you mentioned donations. You're asking Mr. McGee to try to get you one of those monster boards and get some figures from Ron Mango. What are some items that you really are looking to add to your collection for folks to check out?
Hand painted teams, highly detailed teams, because again, I've always concentrated on the game boards more than anything. So I've never been a collector of the teams. But yeah, I mean, they're getting more of them out there. And again, the art of electric football is more in the figures and the guys that are doing these sculpted figures. I mean, they're on the par of war game figures.
Yeah.
That's how good they are. They do all the. I mean, man, I don't. Some of these figures got eyeballs. I mean, you can actually see their eyes and stuff on some of these guys, and they do the highlight and shadow effects. The uniform detailing out the thigh pads and pads and stuff like that, wrinkles in the uniforms and stuff like that. So those are more what I'm looking for as far as donations, because I can't afford to buy them. First of all, I mean, I've bought a few. I'll buy every once in a while. I mean, just individual figures, which they sell for like $25, $30, something like that, which is okay. I can afford them every once in a while. So I do get a lot of those. But yeah, just that's mainly what I'm looking for. And then there's like Tom Wilson, who was the actor that played Biff in Back to the Future. He did a painting of electric football way back, 20 something years ago. And that kind of, as far as when you start talking about electric football art, that's what I'm looking for. Anybody that does that, there's not very many that will use electric football as a subject for painting, but there are out there. And then one time, it's been several years ago, I went to a art exhibit at the American Sports Medicine Museum in Mobile, Alabama, and there was some assemblages there that made by NFL James Ridlin, who was an NFL player, linebacker for the Browns. Uh, and he was using electric football figures to create these pieces of art. So yeah, like on my website, I've got an article about it. You can see it. But yeah, I mean that's what got me. That's the type of thing I would like to get, but no, they're very few. And I actually contacted him by email about a year or so ago. He's like 83 years old now, but he did respond, and he's like, "Well, no, I don't have any of them. They were left. He did an exhibit at the Chicago Film Museum or Chicago Institute of Art Museum, and he had those in that. But they did, and I did contact them. They sent me some pictures of what they had. So yeah, that's the kind of thing. But again, it's the highly detailed, hand painted, hand sculpted figures is really more what I'm interested in. If anybody wants to donate, Scott Bricks Turner is probably uh, the uh, the best one of those guys that does that type of work. Gene Sani is another one, uh, and he does a lot of just football art in general. Paintings of players. He's the those are probably the two most famous, or notoriety as far as people who do the really high art pieces. But yeah, there's like I say, there's a lot of guys that are getting into painting and selling the teams.
What about maintenance and servicing of the boards or the bases? Any tips? I mean, if you're throwing flour on there for snow, anything you want to do to kind of maintain your board, your motor, will grease, oil here or there, or are there people who kind of service the boards, the motors, things like that?
No, I mean, there's really not any maintenance in the game boards.
I mean, I would imagine it's an electronic. You want to use them. You want to rotate them in and out. You don't
Oh
want to.
yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, even all those game boards I've got on the walls in that gallery there, they're functional game boards. I could actually take it off the wall, and sit down and play a game on it if I wanted. The only thing that I have found out, and if you start collecting some of the vintage boards that I didn't know about, was if you're like the games that were made in the '60s and all, and the switch on them had kind of had some grease in them or something, and that gets hard and dries up. But you take the motor apart, you can take the switch apart and clean that out. That'll help to restore that. Now again, like how you store your game boards, where a lot of the vintage game boards that I bought off eBay, or I bought a collection. I bought like a 137 game collection of boards from a guy not too long ago, and so when I got them home and started, actually unpacking them, because he had them out in a storage unit that wasn't climate controlled or anything. So when I got them home, of course, a lot of the boxes are melted, and there's rust on the game boards, and it did kind of mess up some graphics. But there is, I'm working on. I'm going to try to restore those by using, like say, vinyl, the vinyl fill covers, the vinyl that people wrap vehicles in now
Yeah.
is something that can be used to reproduce the graphics on these game boards and use that to restore these game boards. But not as far as the motors and being in working condition. I mean, for the most part, I haven't had very little trouble finding, that the games still work. I mean, even that original 49 game board I have still works fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's got a little rust on it, but yeah, that's there's no. I mean, there's not really that much maintenance as far as just keeping it in a dry place mainly. If you're gonna store them, stand them up straight rather than just setting them on. I found that out. But yeah, the boxes, it's very rare that you actually find the box in very good condition. You will every once in a while. I mean, there's guys out there that still have them from their, when they were kids that are still in pristine condition. I was just actually, when I was setting up this art gallery, I was talking to the guy then. He's like, "Yeah, I still got my original one. it's in pristine condition. It's like, man, bring it in. I'd at least like to see it. But yeah, now the figures, like I say, that's that. Now that's where you want to, as far as maintenance on them, because once you get a figure tweaked to, for what you want it to do, you don't want to store it in something that's going to mess those prongs up. In other words, if you just set them down on a table and leave them set down on a table. Over time, it may take the tweak out of them. And of course, keeping them, don't get them, don't set them on something hot, obviously. Anything that will destroy that tweak on the base. So, yeah, I mean, guys use like carrying cases. For the most part, they're just using hardware storage cases to put them in. But, off the prongs so that they're not sitting on the prongs. And then there's like the Warhammer type cases that people use for miniatures.
Again, it's the Art of the Buzz at the Prior Art Gallery, Columbia State, January 9th, this Monday through Friday, March 3rd. Thank you, Chris. It's been a real pleasure, a real enlightening exercise. Best of luck. Hope it's a great turnout. Folks, get down there, check it out. It's free. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way if they want to set up a weekend appointment?
Email is the best way, through the website. My website is NEFGM.org. And then, of course, you can find links to my email address on there and everything. And through Facebook, just message me on Facebook. That's probably the two best ways.
That's right. Give them a follow. It's a great page. Thank you, sir. And again, have a great exhibit.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on. I enjoyed it.